Okay. So, here's an opinion video. I mean, you read the title, you know it's going to be something that probably no one is going to agree on any aspect, but I'm just going to get off my chest because I need to. Here's the thing when it comes to physical and digital, especially video games, I should specify, to me, in case my words alone aren't enough evidence that I happen to love having physicals. Yeah, let's love this meaty ass bastard. You. And yes, I do still have the case, and yes, I am running the game. Yes, the game is waiting for me to get this over with. Here's the thing, okay? Genuinely from the heart here. When it comes down to it, physical and digital, it frustrates me to have to say it because in my head it should be painfully obvious, but a digital when you buy a game digitally, it should never be the same cost as buying it physically because of how many cost corners have been cut and how much cheaper it is to make them that way. Now, here's the thing. Do I think digital should replace physical? Hell no. In fact, even if we reverse it to do I think physical should replace digital, my answer is still no, hell no. You see, my opinion, my thought process, my whole view on digital and physical is that they honestly kind of need each other. Physicals need each other for when you got people who are willing to spend more for cool little stuff, and digitals should honestly, well, be around because they should be the cheaper alternative. You heard me. The thing about digital and physical is honestly, digital stuff like collector's editions, let's cut the bullshit, they suck. Okay, they're just digital crap that means nothing. And on top of that, you only get to use for as long as the game remains relevant. The moment the game is no longer popular amongst the masses, or the moment that a sequel drops, that collectors means nothing and is pretty much thrown away. Yeah. Honestly, there's a far better way to do this. When it comes down to stuff like collector's editions, keeping those to physical and having them actually have little cool physical things is and charging those at a higher price makes more sense than any so far of the digital crap I've seen. Like by a lot. And again, with how much cost is cut from not doing it physically, there's no sane reason why they should be charging the same prices as physical editions. Oh, sorry, more now, because way back when, this shit used to actually be in at least at a sane 50, max of 60. Now it's 70 minimum. And some are trying to make it even more than that. Some are trying to make it into the $100, which is brain dead. That is a surefire way to get your entire industry to just collapse. But here we are. The thing is that honestly, when it comes down to it, is that physical and digital are not something that should be deleted from each other. They should be working together so that this way they can reach more people in a far more effective way. Utilizing physicals for those who like collector stuff, that's a great idea. Having little things you can actually wear or have or even use, awesome idea. But digital collector's editions just suck. They're not good. They're overpriced to hell for how many cost corners have been cut to sell it that way. It's frustrating that And honestly, the real reason for why game industry seems to be getting more and more expensive is not because it actually is. It's just because a lot of the big guys are burning their money with the most piss poor planning and budgets I that are possible. The thing is that they're so consumed with burning their money, thinking it's going to make their money back, that they're not actually making proper money at all on any level. In fact, if anything, their lower numbers and their higher numbers are both diluted and completely skewed by this idiotic idea that burn money, make money. That's not truly how it works. Just burning the money means nothing. It's about using the money smartly. It's about using the money where you need to use it. But they just keep thinking that, oh, we'll just throw hundreds of millions and that solves everything. Sure, totally. How is Skull and Bones? How's many of the live service games we've had so far? How's just about any AAA game so far? Oh yeah, very many of them kind of suck. And it's not because they have bad concepts necessarily, or because they don't have great blueprints they could have used. No. It's just because they didn't plan properly and then thought, let's throw money at it blindly. And in doing so, here we are, where you're struggling. Granted, yes, there is quite a few other problems that go into some of these releases. Yes, that is true. But none of us have enough time in a day to talk about every single one of them. None of us want to because we're tired of having to point it out. Because there's only so many times you can say the same thing before finally you just want to say nothing. And in my case, that's no different. I'm tired of having to say, make an entertaining game, make a fun game. You will make money if you make sure that that is your priority and then have other stuff on top of that. Because then you have it the foundation right. I'm tired of saying that. You're tired of saying that. I want to bet money you're probably tired of hearing it just like I'm tired of hearing it. Am I wrong? Probably not. Ultimately, though, they think that just throwing money will make up for whatever issues or problems there are, and that's not true. Just throwing money blindly at anything doesn't fix anything. Now, throwing money at something effectively, now that can help. But that's the key word, effectively. That's the note to really put in some caps locks there, right? Effectively. When you do it effectively, you can make positive changes and fix some of your problems. Yes, that's true. Hell yeah. Preach. But again, effectively. Putting that money where there are problems that need to be fixed. Putting that money where there are people who need to be hired to be able to fix something. Money to hire people to train your people on how to do things better. All of those are critical. Critical things. That when you throw money blindly, none of those get dealt with. None of those are acknowledged. None of those happen. Digital should never be the same cost or more than what physicals have been or should be. Now, let me make this clear. Has video game prices risen enough to a point where there should be a slight price hike? Yes. $100? Not a shot in hell. It is not that bad. It's just the companies are wasting money and they expect you to bend over backwards for them when it's them who's wasting the money. Ultimately speaking, okay, there's a far better way this should all be going. And let me just tell you right now, here's one of your first hints. Would you like another hint? Don't worry, don't worry. I got you, I got you, I got you, I got you, fam. I got you. Here's your next hint. Boom. Only people my age or older will remember these bastards. This is called an instruction manual. It goes over all the stuff in the game. Now, here's the thing. And this is very important to remember. All games had that. Back when. And honestly, they shouldn't have been gotten rid of. I don't think they need to be quite as bulky as they were, to be fair. But gotten rid of entirely, That's a stretch. Don't get me wrong. Okay, digital shouldn't be gotten rid of just because physical had stuff to come with it. That doesn't mean digital should be gone. It just means that the price tag shouldn't be quite as exaggerated. The reality is that this is how I would recommend handling it. This is not the end all be all solution at all. No, it's not perfect. It's just what I would recommend in general. Just because it is a bit more effective and it allows you to get your game to more people and get them to people in a more effective, healthy manner. When you're going to do a digital only game, you should never have the game being $70. Okay, no. That's absolutely insane. Now, you could say that AAA can get away with it, but I'm going to call you bullshit because typically AAA games on the low end normally sell, what, roughly almost a million to a million sometimes for average, roughly, give or take. Well, here's the thing is that when you do the math, 70 times a million, that's 70 million right there. And that's not counting tax at all. So basically, by selling a million of copies of one game, you've managed to make $70 million. Now, here's the thing that's running with the assumption that those people only bought the base game and that every one of them only bought the base game. Otherwise, we have to crank that number up higher and higher the more people that buy the other editions. Hell, just to go up one edition is an extra $20 to our total. So basically, if we assume by some stretch of bullshit that everyone bought the second edition, for the second tier, congratulations, we've gone from 70 million to 90 million. Now, before you start saying, but King, dev costs are in the hundreds to almost billions. No, they're actually not. Well, depending on what you're doing. If you're treating yourself, if you're handling it with the same ineptitude as some of the big companies, then yes, it's that much because you keep throwing money away for nothing. You're throwing money blindly away with no attempt to use that budget smartly, effectively, or relevant to whatever is going wrong with your own game. That's why it's up there. It's because of poor decisions and bad management. Number of games just within this year alone. Not in every, not since the dawn of AAA. No, just this year alone. The number of games that have been butchered, massacred, and destroyed by god awful management, delusional expectations that could never be met. Hello, frickin' Square Enix. Ugh. The number of games destroyed by just those two things alone, not counting any of the other issues we're having. That's not counting them. That's not acknowledging them. That's just focusing on those two specific things alone. Tons of games have been butchered because of that. Just those two things alone. Then you have the other problems, which has not made things better, but have made things tragically worse. I had to make up a new word. Dramatic and tragically. Tragically. There. I had to make up a new word to define how bad things got. Yikes. The thing is that, yes, we have tons of advancements. Yes, we don't have anywhere near the same technical limitations we used to have. But now we're having new issues. Issues that are baffling. The facts are is the real reason that game industry seems like it costs billions just for anybody to be a part of it isn't actually because it's billions of dollars for anyone to do it. It's because big companies keep throwing their money away blindly into a bonfire and wondering why they're not making 10 times that amount. Well, unrealistic expectations, bad management. There's your reason why. It isn't rocket science. I don't get me wrong. Video game making is not easy. As someone who is still learning, I'm going to tell you right now, it is not easy. It is effort and it is time. It is practice. Okay? It is. But the thing is that the real reason we're struggling so hard is specifically that. The people who are running AAA are inept and have no clue what they're doing. And honestly, don't really properly know how to run a realistic and sustainable business at all. And in fact, some of them are honestly under this delusion that, I'll just keep going to whatever place next, and not realizing that eventually that means wherever you go next is already doomed to fail by default. The thing is that honestly, video game making is not that expensive. Not the way AAA making it look. It isn't. It is nowhere near that at all. Even more so when you're first starting out and making stuff like 2D pixel games. Oh, it is nowhere near that on ever standards. Like, never will it be that much. Ever. In reality, the reason why it seems that way is just because of how much they're failing to manage their money, their people, their work properly. And then them having the gall to do all this digitally, which reduces the prices of how much it costs for them to do all this stuff anyways, that's not helping. It isn't. The reality is that honestly, my advice for you is simple. Be realistic about what can or can't be achieved. Just from doing that alone, you've already helped your game and your business a shit ton. You've already done a ton just from that alone. Another thing that can actually really help you is understanding that digital shouldn't be used as a replacement. It should be used as an extra means of accomplishing the same goal. When it comes down to it, physicals and digitals should be working hand in hand, not one more than another. Digital should be a way of getting a game to be cheaper so this way you can get it to more people, while physicals are more for collectors and people who love to have box arts and manuals and trinkets and figures and helmets and shit. Okay? It's basically meant to be something that you yourself collected because you not only were interested in the game, but you were interested enough to the point where you wanted to have cool little trinkets. Some kind of memorabilia of it. That's the big thing. Now, the thing is, when I say memorabilia, I'm not specifically meaning any one thing. I mean, I'm keeping it open there so this way you can decide for your own game's purposes what would be better for you. Here's an example, is that for my game that I've been literally working on for way too damn long in the background, that game, the plan for it is to have, basically for a collector's edition, have a little amulet. Now, granted, due to the fact that many factors, I don't want to get into them all, we'll be here too long. I want to make sure that whatever I do use for collector's editions for me, because I've always preferred stuff you can like wear instead of stuff that just sits there. So basically, for me, I'm thinking probably for my games, when I do release collector's editions of stuff, for me, it's going to be stuff like rings. It's going to be stuff like necklaces, hats, stuff like that. Stuff that you can actually wear instead. Because to me, that's far more entertaining. Plus, if you're someone who has kids, then you can treat that thing like it's an heirloom and say, "Child, I pass this on to you. I got this thing from a collector's edition. Here you go. You can even wear that shit. Mm-hmm. Where's my dentist?" I want something that you can basically, that's going to have a lot more staying power and honestly kind of have a little bit more likability than just a statue. Statues are cool, but that's just a death space claimer. And maybe it's just because I've always had not a ton of space to work with, maybe. But the idea of a statue that takes up space does not sound pleasant. Again, it's probably a biased reason for that. Anyways, when it comes down to it, is quite genuinely speaking, I want to make this clear here. This whole video's point is not about down with digital or down with physical. You have not paid enough attention to anything said. In fact, actually, what I'm saying is very much the opposite. Is that honestly, digital and physical should never be viewed as necessarily two wholly separate, unrelated things. That these things are and should be utilized as a teamed effort. Physical for those who love collectors and cool trinkets and stuff like that, and digital for those who just want to game for the cheapest price possible. Because you gotta remember, it is far cheaper to actually make a game through digital than it is with the disc. But one of the nice things, especially about old school games, is that because they were on disc and they were used as the space and the storage for all the data, you really didn't have downloads, really. You put the game in, you played. Done. Honestly, when I do start actually releasing games for selling purposes, which is not going to be for a long while, let me tell you right now, I still have too much to learn. I really do. Which I'll get into a whole thing separate about that some other time. But basically, when it comes down to it, my advice is actually just something kind of simple, really. When it comes down to games and you're wanting to think about how you want to release them, you should always think of these two things as beneficial to each other. Physical does benefit from digital, and digital does benefit from physical. One for collectors, one for people who just want to save money. By doing this, you would actually be spending so much less already just there because of how much more effective that would be for you. And you don't have to make necessary collector's editions something that are in an unending stock. You don't have to do that either. You can still have them be a limited number so it doesn't eat into your profits much. But having that be the way you get about special collector stuff is far better than this digital stuff we have now. But on top of that, by having the digitals not be the collector crap fest that they've been, and by lowering their prices to something actually likable and something good for how much cost you're cutting, that's a good idea. And it makes it far more available to more people. In fact, you know what's the funniest part about this? A lot of times, adjusting your prices to what is best for each country is kind of a given. Why do I have to explain that, actually? Why? Sorry, headache growing. Blech. What do I hope you take away from this video is simple. That if you're someone out there who is planning on getting involved with game industry, the selling of games, to remember digital and physical should never be viewed as opposite forces. They should always be viewed as a team. Things that benefit from each other. Because they do. That's just a fact. Whether you accept that fact, that's up to you. But the reality is as such. Physical and digital actually benefit from each other when they're making up for what the other one really shouldn't do. The reality is digital really shouldn't be obviously got expensive ass collector stuff because they unless you go out of your way to make sure that these things can carry over, which let's cut the crap here. Toxically few people do that. Let's be real. Well, then you just spent tons of extra money for something that's only going to be useful for a very limited amount of time, or have its purpose, meaning, or even usability or relevance be for a short amount of time. Not great. And when it comes down to stuff like physical editions, you need to not be going as low as you possibly can for these. For these, you have to be charging certain specified amounts to make up for what you spent into it. That much is true, especially when you're doing collector's editions. However, collector's editions via physical means you can add far better, more long lasting, more meaningful things. Things that will actually last the test of time, even. That's a big thing to remember. And what's more is by utilizing physical, the old school way of where all the data is on that disk, guess what you do? You annihilate one thing that annoys the living shit out of everybody. Downloads that take fucking forever. You buy a game and you have to wait 5 hours. Sorry, if you have great internet, couple hours. Or you could have just had all that stuff on that one specific disc instead of having that disc be basically like a voucher. And then making it so people can just play the moment they get home to play their game. Which, honestly, mass majority of people would prefer that over waiting. Yeah. Honestly, what I hope you take away from it is exactly that. That digital and physical are not something that should be replacing each other because they can't, but instead should be benefiting each other, offering up what the other one can't. The reality is the physical can't really operate on a lower price tag, whereas the digital one is cutting enough cost corners to the point where it can go at lower costs. Now, just to give an example, if I made a, let's say I made a AAA game, just so we have numbers that you can like compare to easily. Not because I myself am capable of making AAA games, just as an example. In a case of an example, if I make a $70 AAA game, well, okay, if I'm selling it physically, I need to make sure that I'm selling it for roughly the $70. Here's the catch though. What I could do instead of having $70 on physical and digital, thus begging the question of what's the effing point between either of them, really. Instead, what I can do is the far more meaningful having a 70 or slightly more collector's edition, and then having the digital be, say, 50. Now, here's the thing is some people are going to say, you're going to be hemorrhaging money. No, I won't. Do you know why? Because that 50 means that there's going to be more number of sales, which in turn means that I'm going to make more money. That's the kind of thing is that when you charge huge prices, you're limiting the number of people who can buy. The more you limit that number, the less sales you're going to have. The less sales you have, in actuality, the less money you have. By keeping the cost to an amount that's actually reasonable and is relatively between what you need and what the customer needs, you're going to be doing a lot better. Especially once you start having the mindset of not throwing money away blindly. When you are putting the money, the budget, to the places the budget needs to be. That will also make it so that doing this whole charging for between what the cost you need versus what the customer needs, the reason you're not going to be hemorrhaging as much is because of that. Because you're using your budget wisely and you're also having this extra method that gets it into more people's hands, you're going to be selling more. Why am I having to tell people this? How did we get to the point where I'm teaching people common sense on business practices? How did we get here again? Anyways, I will see you all. Hopefully, I'll be able to get the next video, on time. I'm hoping. But to be fair, I've been sitting on this for so long that there's no way to make it shorter than it is. See ya.